Thank you, Andy. And hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you all. For our first year students and families, this may be our first time meeting each other. So allow me to introduce myself. I'm Val Smith, president of Swarthmore College. Our goal this evening is to talk about our planning for the upcoming academic year and address your questions about what life on campus will be like this fall. I'm thrilled to welcome our entire student body to campus and return to an in-person residential learning experience. As you anticipate returning to campus, I imagine that you're feeling a mix of emotions, from excitement to apprehension. And that's to be expected. The last 18 months have been unsettling, to say the least. While the circumstances around COVID-19 are vastly improved compared to what we faced a year ago, we are once again, of course, facing a surge in cases, both in our region and in many spots across the country and the globe. Excuse me. Here at Swarthmore, we continue to make decisions that prioritize the health and well-being of our students, faculty, and staff members. We are guided by the latest science, and we continue to adjust our policies based on recommendations from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Pennsylvania Department of Health, and guidance from our own medical and public health professionals. We know, for instance, that being vaccinated is the safest, most effective way to limit the spread of COVID-19 and the effects it has on those who contract the virus. That is why we have required all students and all employees to be fully vaccinated, with the exception of those who receive religious or medical exemptions. Employees who cannot verify that they're fully vaccinated will either be placed on leave or they will resign from the college. So again, we are requiring all students and all employees to be fully vaccinated, with the exception of those who receive religious or medical exemptions. The science also tells us that the Delta variant can be spread by fully vaccinated individuals. And that's why we are reinstituting our indoor masking requirements. All individuals, regardless of vaccination status, will be required to wear masks indoors with certain exceptions, such as while actively eating or drinking, or while you are in your residence hall. This fall will require us to demonstrate creativity, flexibility, and most of all, a great deal of empathy as we continue to make our way through the pandemic. We may need to change course, perhaps quickly, depending on the course of the virus. But I've witnessed time and again how much we are able to achieve when we work together as a community. And so I'm optimistic about the coming year. We are all on this journey together. Now, a number of my colleagues from the college are joining me tonight to talk with you about the fall semester. I want to assure you that even if we don't have the answers to all of your questions right now, we are working diligently, carefully, and thoughtfully on our plans for the fall. Joining me tonight are Vice President for Finance and Administration, Greg Brown, Assistant Vice President for Auxiliary Services, Anthony Coscignano, Director of Financial Aid, Vero Duffins, Vice President for Communications and Acting Chief of Staff, Andy Hirsch, Assistant Director of Student Health and Wellness, Mary Riley, Dean of Students, Tomoko Sakumura, Vice President for Student Affairs, Jim Terhune, Provost and Dean of the Faculty, Sarah Willie LeBreton. I'm also pleased to welcome to the conversation Dr. Peter Axelrod, Professor of Medicine, Professor of Microbiology and Immunology, and Chair of the Infection Control Committees of Temple University Hospital and Fox Chase Cancer Center. Dr. Axelrod has been working with us on our planning efforts, and his counsel has been invaluable. Thanks to all of you who submitted questions in advance. We'll begin by responding to the questions that came up most frequently. And you can also ask questions during the session using the Zoom chat feature. We'll do our best to address those as well in the time we have together this evening. Please note that this program is being recorded, and we'll share a link to the recording as soon as we're able. Andy Hirsch, Vice President for Communications, will moderate this town hall. Andy, what is our first question?
Thank you, Val. Perhaps not surprisingly, given the number of participants tonight, we have a lot of questions that were submitted ahead of time. We're also seeing a lot of questions in the chat, so we will do our best to cover everything. Not surprisingly, most of the questions revolved around either COVID-19 related issues or the process of returning to campus, move-in, and those sorts of things. I think we'll start there with Tomoko and Jim, and maybe you could give an overview of what the move-in process is going to look like in a few weeks from now.
Sure. I'm just going to start at a very kind of 10,000 foot level here, and then I know Tomoko has a little bit more detail to offer. We've got a really full slate of folks coming back to campus. We had a really strong admissions year, which is wonderful for the college. And everybody who was able wanted to come back this year. So we're really thrilled with that. But it also couples with some other challenges at the moment. There's a little bit less study abroad going on this year than there normally is. So we're going to be very full on campus this year, a very crowded housing environment for the community. That said, we have final word here today from the housing office that 100% of the students who requested housing at this point have rooms assigned. And I know that a number of the questions that came in ahead of time were about room assignments and when those were going to go out. And I think you all know by now that room assignments have gone out. But I'll turn it over to Tomoko and let her get into a little bit more detail about that. And then we'll talk a little bit about the move-in issues as well.
Thank you, Jim. So students, your housing assignments are now available to be viewed in the housing portal. Please note that if you're accessing the portal from overseas, it's very important to VPN to access that, but you should be able to see your assignments in the portal. And with regard to the move-in process, it is very important for you to make a reservation. And new students are asked to identify a time between 8 a.m. and noon on Tuesday, August 24th. Returning students, you will be selecting a move-in time from Friday, August 27th, Saturday, August 28th, or Sunday, August 29th, between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And many of you, or some of you, sorry, are also returning early. And you may be athletes, you may be international students, residential peer leaders. It is really important to coordinate with your sponsor that process of move-in. So please do that. And as was announced today by email from the directors of the Student Health Center, it is also important, those of you who require health clearance, that you make an appointment with the health center before you arrive.
Jim and Tomoko, thank you. I think we have a couple of specific questions around family members being able to help out when they arrive on campus, and also whether or not, and I think you touched on this, folks have to reserve time slots for returning to campus.
Yes, parents and the guardians definitely will be able to support and help out during move-in. And please, we would like to ask for you to follow the masking guidance on the on the date that you move in. And yes, and any questions that are related to move-in or storage, it would be very important to contact housing@swarthmore.edu.
Jim, I didn't want to interrupt you. Were you about to say? Oh, okay.
I'm fine, sorry.
Well, this next question might fall to you or Tomoko as well, but questions about orientation and how that process will work, I guess in just a few weeks from now.
Yes, I'm happy to talk about that. So new students, we have communicated to you through your Swarthmore email, and I hope by now you have accessed the New Student Orientation 2021 course that we set up through the Moodle platform. In there, we are asking you to record your names. We are also asking you to take a look at the academic requirements planning, placement exams, all that information is in there. So please do take a moment, and we will be posting new content weekly in August. And because we are providing more of this informational content through this Moodle site, as we did last year, this year's orientation, we will be focusing on more kind of community building and focusing on that during the time that you're on campus. I also recognize that some of you returning students, sophomores and transfer students who have not actually been on our campus, and we look forward to welcoming you to the orientation so that you can get to know the campus as well.
Yeah, I would just quickly add, I saw a quick question in the chat as Tomoko was responding to this about international student orientation. And those of you who are international students will be getting specific information from Jen Marks Gold, who's the Dean for International Students, that will give really detailed information about international student orientation.
And you guys are on a roll, so we'll stick with some of these move-in questions. We had a number of questions from family members about any opportunities to see campus, to visit campus ahead of time, or perhaps tour campus while they're here helping with move-in. Sure,
I'll take a quick crack at this one, give Tomoko a chance to catch her breath there. First of all, again, as Tomoko said, parents and families are welcome to help students move in this year. We're excited to have parents and families be part of the arrival experience for new students this year. And yes, we will be offering tours of campus on that arrival day. So the actually admissions office tour guides, I believe, are going to be helping us out that day and offering campus tours to folks who haven't had the opportunity to actually be on campus, because we know that for many of the people in the class of 2025, who went through the admissions process and weren't able to do campus visits last year because of COVID restrictions. So we will be offering those.
Great, thank you both. We're seeing a number of questions in the chat, and we also had a few submitted ahead of time about COVID precautions ahead of move-in. So Mary, maybe we could switch over to you for a couple of these questions. And I know a message went out to students earlier today, and I think we have a link we can provide in the chat that has the content of that message for folks to refer to. But if you could describe what the expectations are for students as they're coming back to campus, and a little bit about what the testing and contact tracing protocols will look like as we start the semester.
Yeah, well, first I just wanted to start by talking a little bit about the COVID-19 vaccine. As you all know, it is required for this year, along with several other vaccines that have been required in the past. And I'm happy to report that at this point, 89% of students returning to campus or coming to campus for the first time are arriving already fully vaccinated, which is a fantastic start. We have already arranged to host 2 vaccine clinics within the first couple weeks of students' arrival to get those that haven't been able to access the vaccine at home or where they're living to get the vaccine right from the start. And I know there were a couple questions about who has wavered and how many people have wavered. To date, we've only had 15 people submit and be approved for a waiver for a medical or a religious exemption. So again, I think from a vaccine standpoint, we are at a really good and strong starting point. So I think that's a great step towards some safety on our campus this year with regards to COVID. As far as the testing program goes, I kind of think of it as 2 broad categories of testing. We have our screening testing, which is taking a portion of the population and screening them and testing them regardless of symptoms. And this year, because thanks to vaccination, we are going to continue testing the unvaccinated students for the time being. So when students come, they're either unvaccinated or only partially vaccinated. On arrival, they will have a COVID test completed, and then they'll be allowed to move in once we have that test result. And that will be a rapid test, so we'll know very quickly. After that, those unvaccinated students will continue to test on a weekly basis, again, so that if there's some virus circulating on the campus, we can detect it. Besides the screening tests, we also have testing within our health center for students that may become ill and have symptoms that are concerning for a COVID-19 infection. And these tests will be used regardless of vaccine status, because like we know, vaccines are very good at protecting people. However, they're not perfect. So we will be using those on both vaccinated and unvaccinated students. And, like with all things COVID, the information is changing regularly. We are all seeing so much about this Delta variant, and we're keeping our eyes on it. And if anything changes, if we need to change, we are prepared to. The great thing about this year compared to last year is how many more resources we have. Last year, we were struggling with just finding testing, and this year, testing is just down the corner, or in our health center, it's quite easy to get to. So that's a great starting point, and we're moving in the right direction. So I'm happy to say that.
Mary, thank you. Lots of questions about sophomores in the chat. We're going to get to that in a minute, but I think we're also seeing a number of questions about masking, maybe clarifying our approach to masking, especially given the new guidance from the CDC. Peter, I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that recent guidance and our approach to moving back to indoor masking on this temporary basis.
Yes, well, thanks very much. So a few months ago, the CDC was very upbeat about vaccinated people not having to wear masks very much when they were around other vaccinated people, because the transmission just seemed to be almost negligible. And I was thrilled. It just felt great to feel like there was not much masking in my future. But as Dr. Smith said, the new strain of COVID is just so much more contagious than the old strains. So, as you know, the vaccine is highly protective against hospitalization and death. So this is not an epidemic of horrible disease anymore. It's more an epidemic of less horrible disease, but always with the possibility that somebody who's young and healthy might potentially infect somebody who isn't, even if they're vaccinated. So what the CDC now suggests is they kind of suggest universal indoor masking for schools. Part of it, of course, is because young kids can't be vaccinated, but also just because of the close proximity in, small rooms for long periods of time. And then the other thing they suggest is that for areas where there's substantial transmission, that indoor masking should generally be the rule. And looking at, our county in Pennsylvania, unfortunately, there's not horrible transmission, but there still is substantial transmission. So indoor masking, with some exceptions, seems to be what's recommended, and we all feel that that's the safest. As Jim said, we're not requiring masks for residential students in the dorms. And part of the reason is that, well, first of all, it's a much smaller space. But second of all, residential students in general barely go out of the campus environment, so they're not exposed to so much free virus. And there has to be a little bit of consideration given for the quality of life of residential students. So we felt on balance that was safe for dormitories. And there may be other special changes of spacing and masking, under special situations like sports and music and stuff like that. But I think that's the basic principle. And to me, the good thing is that, Swarthmore went through a whole year with unvaccinated students, unvaccinated staff, and did amazingly well, just very tiny amounts of infection. And so now with the vaccine being available, I'm just hoping for a super duper safe semester.
Peter, thank you. Lots of folks are asking about the various exceptions, when who needs to be masked and when. We are going to send out a communication tomorrow to the campus community detailing some of those exceptions. Jim, did you want to jump in and mention something?
Yeah, I noticed a bunch of questions about masking in the residence halls and looking for clarity there. And just to, everything comes with the caveat that I think we would all say that if this town hall was taking place 2 weeks ago, we would have been giving different answers than we're giving tonight. And so the caveat is we don't know what's going to change between now and when everybody arrives. And so things could change. But based on where we are at this moment, our hope and expectation is that residential students don't need to wear masks in residence halls. That's not just your room, that's in residence halls. So if you're in a residence hall, you're a residential student, then you don't need to wear a mask in the halls.
And just because these questions are popping up a few times in the chat, I'll try to tick through some quickly. We are not at this time requiring masking outdoors. I think the evidence is clear that it's almost impossible to catch the virus at this point outside. And lots of people have asked when we'll revert. I mean, we're just going to monitor the situation, likely follow CDC guidance. And all along what we've said is we're going to make decisions based on the best interests of the health and well-being of our students, faculty, and staff. So we certainly hope to see the rates go back down in Delaware County and adjust the masking policy accordingly. Another question that's come up a lot, when that time comes, our intention at this time is to require anyone who isn't fully vaccinated to still mask indoors. So I think I covered a few of those things. Okay, we talked about going back to the questions about sophomore experience as they come back to campus, having been in a unique first year last year. So I don't, Tomoko or Jim want to take that on?
Certainly. We do have a number of programming that is planned for the welcome weekend, which is the weekend after classes begin for sophomores specifically. And this will include a second collection, which is very special. It will be your first collection, but in person during that weekend. And the residential community coordinators and your peer leaders are really thinking about you and planning very sophomore specific programming in the residence halls as well. So please look out for information on that through email, as we love to communicate through email with you. So that's what I can share at this time.
Thanks, Tomoko. Jim, a lot of questions about the Garnet Pledge, and we do have a version of the Garnet Pledge for this coming semester that was sent out to students and parents a couple of weeks ago. But really, maybe if you can, again, just describe the pledge, how it was updated, and sort of how it will be used going forward this semester.
Yeah, I think we've continued to use that language of the Garnet Pledge because people are familiar with it. And I think people understand that to refer to what are our COVID guidelines and our COVID regulations. But we are certainly moving into a different phase here this year than where we were last year. I think those of us who can remember back to where we were, there was so much more uncertainty about everything. There was no vaccine. And we felt like we were in a very different place in terms of trying to ensure people's health and safety going into the year last year. We still see the need to be taking significant steps for health and safety, but because of the vaccine, because of the experience we had last year, I think we have a better sense of how we can navigate this and manage it together. All that is sort of a long-winded way of saying we're really evolving the Garnet Pledge back into being more consistent with what normal handbook policies would be. So what's in the Garnet Pledge is what's expected of students, but the way we will respond to violations of the Garnet Pledge would be the way we would respond to any other violation of college policies, and not special or unique from that, which is how we handled them last year. So it's a different space, and it will continue to evolve as things on the ground change with the virus, as transmission rates change. And like I said a few minutes ago, 2 weeks ago, we expected to be in a little bit less restrictive space than we currently are. And I think our hope and our expectation is that we will move to a less restrictive space when we get to the other side of the current surge here with the Delta variant. So everything will continue to be fluid. We're going to continue to ask students and faculty and staff members to put the health and safety of the entire community at the forefront, and to work with us to abide by the guidelines and restrictions that are detailed in the Garnet Pledge.
Thanks, Jim. Gonna move over to academics now, and to Provost and Dean of the Faculty, Sarah Willie LeBreton. We're seeing a number of questions, again, in the chat and ahead of time about the academic experience, particularly around live classes. Lots of people asking, will classes be taught live? Are there going to be asynchronous lessons? So Sarah, maybe if you could speak to the expectations for what the academic experience will look like heading into the fall.
Sure, Andy. Yes, that's good news. Classes will be live. I think so many of us are looking forward to seeing all of you and to being seen by you. So classes will be live and in person. There may be an experience or two that's remote or by Zoom, where a guest lecturer who might have flown from another country to join us on campus is someone that we end up seeing or speaking with remotely. But for the most part, classes, laboratories, dance classes, seminars, art classes, singing classes, all kinds of classes, all the classes will be in person. If a student is positive for COVID-19 and needs to be quarantined, we will work with the Dean of Students office in the way that we always have if a student is ill and needs to miss class. So that stays the same. If a student is clearly ill, they usually talk to fellow students and get notes from those people. And that is how we will handle things this year. There may be rare occasions when we're able to record some things by Zoom, but we are planning to handle illness, all kinds of illness, in the same way that we always have. I know that there have been a couple of questions around masking and social distancing in classrooms. We will maintain the masking inside of classrooms as it was just outlined for us by Dr. Axelrod, but we will not be maintaining social distancing. Again, the main point that we want to make is that the overwhelming majority of the community will be vaccinated. And so masking indoors is largely precautionary, but it's important because the academic buildings are different than the dormitories. There are many faculty and staff employees coming and going from these spaces, and it just seems to be cautious and prudent for us to move forward in this way. There won't be social distancing. We will not be asking people to be seated 6 feet apart from each other in classes, but for the time being, we will be asking people to be masked. There may be occasions, again, where it's important for faculty to have their mouths seen if they're teaching a foreign language. And we will make the appropriate accommodations for that with clear masks if that's important. So I want to repeat the point about fluidity. We're leading with health and safety. Things may change if we find that the cases are dropping in the area, and we will give everybody good notice about that. But for the time being, we are going to be in person, we're going to be next to each other, but we're going to be being extra safe with masks. I'm trying to see if there were some other questions. I know several of you were curious about whether we were able to resume our relationship with Haverford, Bryn Mawr, and the University of Pennsylvania. And the good news is that we are, that students can take courses on those campuses, and those students can take courses on our campuses. The further good news is that our sibling schools have come up with very similar approaches to ours and are requiring vaccination of everyone. And then one of the other questions that I know that's come up is whether we expect, if things really go sideways, to kind of shut the campus down and send people home early. I think our approach is to move through the semester as scheduled, and that if there were to be a very important and serious change of events, we might pivot to remote learning because we know how to do that. We're equipped to do that. Our faculty are ready to do that, and our students know how to do that. But that would be moving in a very unlikely situation to remote learning, but with everybody staying on campus. You can imagine that if for some reason lots of people became ill, our first initiative would not to be to put everybody on public transportation to go home. So I don't think that that will happen. I don't think any of the people, including Dr. Axelrod, expect that to happen. So we are optimistic, but we're cautiously optimistic. But we do expect to go through the entire semester in person, and then bid everybody a goodbye at the winter break.
Sarah, could you maybe spend a minute talking about athletics? A few questions about what the sports season might look like coming up this fall.
I'd be delighted to. That's also good news. We are returning to athletics, and we're also returning to in-person physical education, recreation, and wellness. Again, when people are actively engaged, they will not need to be masked. Otherwise, they will be, but we will be engaging in intercollegiate competition with the other teams in the Centennial Conference, and we have all agreed to a prudent and careful approach to safety. So their students are also going to have the mandated vaccination policies. So I'm looking forward to that. I think our students are looking forward to it, to health and wellness and exercise, but also to being able to get out on the field or the courts and show Swarthmore and show our competitors what we're made of.
Great, thanks, Sarah. I think it was last year where we introduced the textbook affordability program, and a few folks have asked if that's going to stay around this year. Greg, I wonder if you could speak to that.
Sure. We're very excited that this will be the second year of the textbook affordability program. For those of you who are new students, this means that as part of the tuition that you paid for, you will be getting a credit to use for required course materials and textbooks at the college store. So that adds up to about $700 for the course of the year. This covers the required course materials for most of our students. So it's a really nice way, particularly for those who are relying on student employment to pay for their textbooks as they used to be able to get their books right on time, and they won't have to worry about being behind their fellow students. A couple of things to know, it's best if you order in advance, and that way your textbooks are ready for you when you're ready for them. So I encourage you to do that. And those of you who were here last year know that we ship textbooks out to you because many of you are home. This year, they'll be waiting for you at the bookstore. So we really look forward to doing this again. We think this is a really important trademark of Swarthmore to make sure that all of our students have equal access to text materials. So take advantage of it, look at the website for it, and we're really pleased to do it. We are starting a committee this year with the student government to continue to evaluate the program to make sure it's meeting your needs. So take advantage of it. We really think it's a great way for you to succeed here at Swarthmore without having the additional financial worry about buying textbooks.
Thanks, Greg. Jim, there are one or two questions about what social life is going to look like on campus this semester. Questions about gatherings and parties and how things will feel when all our students get back. I think you have a few things to say about that.
Sure. Well, what social life looks like on campus is always a bit of a mystery. So we'll find out, I guess, as we go through the year. No, the good news here is, look, we expect to be, I know all the students who were on campus last year really was extraordinary in what we asked of students and the restrictions that were put on, clubs and activities and the ways to gather. And we do not expect that to be the case this year. We expect clubs and extracurricular groups to be able to get together and be functioning in the ways that they normally would, be gathering together and active, to be putting on events and so forth. We do expect students to be able to have parties and have social gatherings with friends. That said, when we get thrown a curveball like we've been thrown in the last couple of weeks here with this surge around the Delta variant, we're also going to be responsive and pay attention to what's going on out there. And so, whereas, if we were talking 2 weeks ago, I think we would have been saying our hope is that we really can see large parties right out of the gate. We may need to limit the size of social gatherings in the early stages or at various points in the year based on transmission rates and so forth. But our hope is to turn this over as much as possible to students. I think one of the important dimensions of a residential college experience is for students to forge their own social life and to learn how to create a social life for themselves in a variety of different ways. And so we want that to be part of your experience. We will work with you and put restrictions in place in those moments and times where it's necessary because of guidance from the CDC and others around health and safety. But our hope is to get back to something approaching quote unquote normal as much and as quickly as possible. I know also that there were been a number of questions about whether or not there'll be a family weekend this year. And what I can say is that I know that there are plans in place and we're currently developing plans. So our hope and expectation is that there will be a family weekend. Again, we'll have to be paying attention to what's going on with the virus at that time and make adjustments to the kinds of programming that are taking place at those moments. But again, our hope and expectation is that there will be a family weekend, and I'm sure there'll be information forthcoming very quickly from the parents' office around that.
Jim, I think along the same lines, lots of questions about whether or not students will be restricted in their travel. Can they go into the city? Can they go into the Ville? What about leaving for breaks? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, again, we're going into the year with the expectation that there are no special restrictions on this in the way that there were last year. I'm certainly hopeful that we're not going to have to move into a place where that would be the case. But our expectation now is that, yeah, if you want to get on SEPTA and go into Philly, go into Philly. We would certainly ask students to honor whatever safety precautions the places that they're going to are asking of people. So if that means you're going someplace and they want you to be wearing a mask, our hope would be that you're wearing a mask. But it is not the case as it was last year pre-vaccine, where we were saying to people, when you come to campus, you're pretty much staying on campus until you go home at the end of the term. You're free to come and go and travel, and you're free to have visitors to campus. We'll pay attention to that. And again, I would make a note here for people, again, as I said at the very beginning, we're really crowded in the residence halls this year. And so if students are interested in having guests come visit them, we are going to say that guests need to be vaccinated. Our expectation is that any guests would be vaccinated. And we really need students to be working with their roommates and their peers in the residence halls to be mindful of the crowding situation. So it may be a year where limiting the number of visitors from other campuses is a good thing to do, just because there just isn't a whole lot of extra floor space kicking around the way that there might be in another year.
Great, thanks, Jim. Somebody asked about the train. The train is running. I think the schedule is still reduced from pre-COVID times, but it is running into Philly. I would turn now to some questions about dining, and Anthony can help us out with some of these questions, and a few different things, but basically, how is dining going to work in Sharples? Will there still be to-go options? So Anthony, maybe you can give us an overview of dining this fall.
Sure, Andy. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be chatting with you tonight. As you've all been asking questions about everything on campus, we're working towards what the campus will be like for this fall, but we're planning for everything to be operating as normal as we can make it. And our plan for dining right now is with Sharples is to open Sharples at full capacity, as it has been in the past, with the serving process happening exactly the same as it has at the different locations. We will be having at Sharples during this time, they'll be serving food. There'll be self-service bars, but we'll also be offering hand sanitation and other ways to manage that process. So, we will be doing mitigation and cleaning and everything else within the building as we go through it. But we are asking everybody to, try to abide by the rules. When they're not eating, to be masked, when they're entering the building to be masked, but when they are eating, of course, they'll be taking their mask off. So for Sharples, we're going to continue to operate that way, and there will be takeout still available from Sharples. We also will be instituting, which we instituted over the last academic year, we had reservation system. The reservation system is not to get into the building at this time, but it will also be used for an express into the building. So if a student wants to use the reservation system, they can use that so that they can bypass things and get directly into Sharples much quicker than having to worry about standing in line to tap. So that's our plan with the reservation system to have in place. It'll be an open system for people to use. Additionally, that same system is using our Get system, which students can order online from our retail locations on campus at SE Mays, the Science Center, or Kohlberg. They can order in advance food to pick up. So that will also limit the waiting in line and also being able to acquire food at a much quicker rate. We continue to plan to open Sharples continuous hours. We're not going to be shutting down between hours for cleaning like we did the last academic year. We plan to open fully throughout the day and 7 days a week for all meal options. The Science Center Cafe will be open 7 days a week as well, from 8 a.m. till midnight. We'll be offering late night snacks options for students to pick up during the late night options at night. Additionally, SCMAs will be open with a late night option as well, Monday through Friday, and Kohlberg will be open during the day and will offer takeout meals just as we have in the past at the Science Center. So we'll be offering those meals through there. And using the Get app, you'll be able to order those in advance so that you'll have that. So we'll know who's wanting their food to pick up. As for the whole surrounding of the dining program, the meal plans are, we'll be bringing back all the regular meal plans that we've had in the past. It would be best to visit our dining website for locations and hours and more information about each one, and additionally to look up the meal plans. Right now, the selection is open in the housing portal for you to go in and make a selection of what type of meal plan you would like. The default plan is our SWAP plan, which is the unlimited plan. If you choose to not make a change to your plan, you will be defaulted to that plan. So it's important to go in if you want a different plan. For freshmen, you only have a choice of the first two plans. So it's important that if you want a different plan than the unlimited plan, to go in and make that change at that time. We also will be bringing back swap points, which will allow you to eat off campus in the borough, also known to many students as the Ville. So we have 9 merchants on that program, including during the time while the farmers market is open. That will be opening up soon to allow students to be able to go get fresh vegetables on Saturdays at the farmers market. But there's also the co-op, which offers groceries and other items, including the other restaurants that are available there. During this time too, as well, you can also use your swap points at the vending machines that are located in most buildings for any snacks or drinks. You will also, you'll also be able to purchase snacks and health and beauty items from the campus community store with your swap points as well. So I would recommend highly to check our websites. There's the One Card website, which will tell you a lot about our Ville merchants, and our dining website, which will tell you a lot about meal plans and locations and hours of and how to use them.
Thanks, Anthony. I wonder if we could quickly shift over from dining to transportation, which also falls under your purview. A few questions about the shuttle service running on campus, also a couple of questions about back and forth to the airport and how that will look this semester.
Yeah, great. So the shuttles are going to run. The Trico shuttle itself will also be running, so that students will be able to get to Bryn Mawr and Haverford for their Trico experience. We will be having the shuttles. We'll be running to the mall. We'll be running to Target. We'll be doing their normal routine that we've had in the past. I would check there is a website directly that talks about the shuttles and the routes and the times and when they will be offering these services to the different locations. Most of the shuttle runs to outside are on the weekends. And then around campus during the day and through the night, we'll be offering shuttle rides throughout the campus to take you from the various locations on campus to other locations around the campus. So it's important to use that. There's also an app that you can see where the shuttles are and be able to view when it's coming to the location that you are located in. And in addition, you can always call public safety and they can always help you with any additional help when it comes to shuttles or services of that nature. As when it comes to the airport, we recommend using mass transit. There is the train, there's the bus. There is also, you're allowed to bring Uber or Lyft onto campus. So if you like to use car share programs, you can also use that. You also, I think there were some questions about parking, which there is a process for students to be able to park on campus. And some students may have a car, which you may be able to work with a friend to be able to get a ride to where you need to go as well. All those processes are the transportation process that will be in place where I recommend looking and reviewing the sites as those are being updated as we continue to look at the process and where we're going during this time.
And Anthony, I've got one more for you. I'm sorry if you already answered this, and I may have been lost in looking through the questions here if you did, but folks are asking about access to buildings generally and whether or not it will look like something pre-COVID or something a little bit more restrictive.
So the plan is that, we will be looking more like pre-COVID. Buildings will be open, doors on buildings will be unlocked for the majority of the day for easy access. Residential halls are of course always locked for the safety of our students that live there. And additionally, if students have special requests, they'll be able to, for labs and certain things like that, they may have access to those. There'll also be access into buildings into the night so that students can have access to go to common spaces or study areas for studying. The best method for students to know where their access is and what they're looking at is to go to the One Card Center. When they log in, they can see what they have access to and what times they have access to those spaces. And that would be the best way to know when your access is available for the different locations around campus and what you have access to.
Great, thank you. And thanks to the colleagues around the screen here who are putting links into the chat. So hopefully those are helping to answer some of the questions. I also just want to make a note because we're short on time. I see a lot of questions that we've answered earlier in the program. We are recording this and we will have a link available for folks so they can go back and watch and try to answer some of those questions they may have missed earlier on. I want to turn to the topic of mental health on campus and back to Jim. Lots of questions about this. Of course, this is a big topic across the country, but folks basically asking how the college is planning to meet the mental health needs of the student body.
Sure. Well, as always, we have a CAPS Counseling and Psychological Services program and office that will be open on campus. Different from last year. Obviously, last year, all of the services that were provided by CAPS were provided remotely. We will be back to providing in-person services this year. I believe that we also expect to have telehealth, meaning remote sessions, as an option for students, because we know that some students actually really appreciated that option. And so students will still be, some students will be able to do telehealth appointments with CAPS counselors here, as well as getting in-person services. And in addition to that, we're continuing to offer the other two remote services that we've had one in place for several years now. So Protocol, which is our 24/7, 365 emergency response service, will continue to be in effect. So students can access a protocol counselor at any time. If they need help accessing a protocol counselor, they can get that through the switchboard. There's also information on the CAPS website about how to do that. And then last year, because of limitations with remote learning and people being far afield, we also contracted with Talkspace, which allows people to do remote counseling anywhere in the world. And we're maintaining our relationship with Talkspace and expect to do that indefinitely. So students any student at any time can access Talkspace and get access to a counselor and therapist through the Talkspace service as well. So we have a very robust set of offerings, and we expect that we will continue to do that and continue to strengthen those programs as we move forward.
Thanks, Jim. Dr. Axelrod, maybe not sure that there's an answer for this question yet, but a lot of individuals are asking about booster shots. And my guess is it's just too soon to say much about that, but I'll defer to your expertise here.
There certainly has been interest in booster shots, but mainly for people whose immune systems are somehow blunted. So people getting special kinds of chemotherapy and or people who have intrinsic immune problems. those are the ones that seem to have antibody levels drop off a bit. And there's a concern that maybe a booster would be helpful. But for a typical healthy student, healthy adult, from what we know now, people who are vaccinated this last winter and spring should be quite protected. Right now, because the vaccines are not completely approved in the final stages, my understanding is it's not even really legal to get a booster because it's not approved for that. But on the other hand, some people just find a way to do it. But my personal suggestion and what I say to my patients is that unless there's some clear immune problem, that at least for right now, you're fine without a booster.
Great, thanks, Peter. I also wonder if you could just spend a second or two on transmission of the virus. A lot of folks asking about cleaning protocols. I know we've got robust cleaning protocols in place, but that really how the virus spreads.
I think that we've learned over the last year and a half that transmission seems to be almost exclusively airborne. So you breathe in the virus. And people's original concern about touching things that someone else had touched, I think have been shown to be not much of an issue. Not that it's a zero issue, but I think that that's not as much of a concern. And as you say, the cleaning that's been going on, in my view, has been really outstanding and very adequate. In the beginning of the epidemic, I would wash my hands after touching anything. I would touch a doorknob and then go wash my hands. And then I would wash my hands from touching the faucet from washing my hands. So I just was very nervous about it. And then, not to say that this proves anything, but now I just feel more relaxed about it. I mean, I certainly wash my hands a fair amount, but I just don't think that surfaces are a big concern. There's some debate among infectious disease doctors about how contagious vaccinated people are. One thing that the CDC found was that as best they could quantitate the virus, in the mouth and nose, it seemed like vaccinated people and unvaccinated people appeared to have about the same amount of virus. But there's been some debate about that because some people say, look, yes, you're just measuring viral RNA, but that doesn't really go along with how contagious the virus is and how able it is to, infect people. And some people really feel like it probably some of the concern about vaccinated people spreading the virus are overblown. But my view is that, people who are vaccinated rarely get super sick with this virus now, thank goodness. And that contact between limited numbers of vaccinated people without a mask in many circumstances is okay. But that with a mask and hand washing, that vaccinated people run the risk of infection, but not a big risk. And I'm conducting my life like the risk to me is real, but small.
Great. Thank you, Peter. I think we're going to try to squeeze in a couple quick answers here, Jim, from you, just to keep getting popped up. One is about being able to go off campus for the breaks, and also maybe the ability to stay on campus during breaks. And the other is about the experience for off-campus students and the sort of access they'll have to campus.
Well, the answer is yes to all of those things, if that makes it easy. In terms of leaving for breaks, for a fall break, whatever, as I mentioned before, students have the freedom to come and go from campus, and that includes going home for breaks or going to visit other people on breaks. Of course, we want you to be careful and be cautious and do all those things, but we're not restricting your movement on or off campus with respect to breaks. We also have the same policy that we have had for a long time, which is that with the exception of the winter break, students are permitted to stay on campus during fall break, during Thanksgiving break, if you are so inclined. So if you want to stay on for fall break, you are welcome to do so. And then the question about off-campus students, again, we're not in the same place where we were last year, where we just had the very tight restrictions on which cohorts were on campus. Off-campus students are free to come and go from campus as well. The one thing that is at this moment in time that's different for off-campus students from residential students is we would ask off-campus students who are coming and going from campus regularly to wear masks in all campus buildings, including residence halls. So that would be the one distinction there.
Jim, thank you. And I know we're a few minutes past the hour, so I believe, Val, you have a few closing remarks to wrap us up here tonight.
Yes, I do, Andy. First, let me thank all of our guests for spending this time with us and for submitting and asking such thoughtful questions. I'd also like to thank my colleagues for your thoughtful and generous responses to all these questions. Let me remind you that this program is being recorded and we will share a link. I know a number of people have asked about this. We'll be sharing a link to this recording within the next few days. If you find that you had a question that we did not address, I encourage you to reach out to the Dean's Division for additional information. Finally, I would like to emphasize a point that a number of my colleagues have made and that I made at the beginning of this session, which is that we are acting and we are continuing to act as we have in the past on the best information and guidance available to us. As we've seen over the course of the past 17, 18 months, circumstances can shift quickly and they can shift dramatically. We will be responsive to those changes as we have in the past, and we will continue to make decisions that are in the best interest of the health, safety, and well-being of every member of our campus community. I look forward to seeing you on campus later this month, and I know all my colleagues feel the same. So good night, and thank you once again for joining us.